my brother to pass the potatoes and just not acknowledging this elephant in the room for everyone but my grandmother. My name is Erica Lenti. I am a journalist by trade. I'm currently a senior editor at Extra, which is an LGBTQ2 media organization, and I'm based in Toronto, where I live with my partner Ariel and our one-eyed dog Belle. The Hollywood understanding of coming out has always been like, there's this one great moment where like the kid goes to prom and she's got her girlfriend on her arm and then suddenly everyone knows she's queer. But in reality, it's just this constant, expectation to tell people that you meet, as you meet them, that you're queer, and that never really stops. The more you meet new people, the more you have to come out to them over and over again. Well, with my mom, I had started seeing somebody. I was a teenager, all my friends had boyfriends, and I had this girl who I was seeing, and I told my mom everything except for this like one big part of me, and I just could not bear her not knowing that I had this big secret and this huge part of my identity that she didn't know about. And so I told her. My brother found out through the grapevine at school, and I was sort of forced to tell him. I think both with my mom and brother, it's taken time for them to understand who I am and just to come to understand who I am from a different perspective. And with my dad, we weren't always very close. You know, my friends say that my dad looks like Tony Soprano, and he's kind of like a quiet, like big Italian guy with a mustache, and he's kind of intimidating looking. And so I just never felt like I could talk to him about that part of me. And I decided, later on in life, I was in university, that I wanted him to know about this part of me because it was such a big part of me. At the time, I was writing a lot about queer issues, and I didn't want him to not know about the stuff I was writing about, and I wanted him to know why I was so passionate about it. And the only way I thought I could do that was by coming out. And then I ended up meeting Ariel, and my dad really loves her, and I'm so glad that we can have that relationship that I don't think would have been possible had I kept this part of me a secret. So my dad is sort of like this interesting bridge between my mom, who I'm very close with, and who has been very supportive and understanding, and I tell her everything, and my grandparents, who I have not told anything, and they're very traditional and they're kind of intimidating. And so I see my dad as sort of like this middle point, and I don't know how to, I don't think I will ever know how to move from that being intimidated, but knowing it will improve our relationship, to actually coming out to my grandparents. I never knew when the right time was, or I never understood how I would do that, because they're very conservative. My grandmother is 80, and she grew up in Calabria, Italy. She has always understood marriage as something between a man and a woman. She has always understood marriage as an opportunity to have children and to grow your family, and she's very traditional. So I don't know how she would understand, if she could even rationalize what a queer relationship would look like. Not that everyone in that generation is this way, but I think she's of a generation where many people just don't understand queerness. And so I've just always excluded her from the coming out process. I think from being a teenager, I've always just sort of decided I'm not going to come out to her because I don't know how, and I don't think it will benefit our relationship. And I've always had sort of a morbid thought that she would die before I got married, which is really awful, but the one way I could rationalize not coming out to her, I mean, I think she's just said it flat out to me that she wants me, to find a nice Italian boy, and you'll get married and have lots of children, and you'll see when you meet a nice guy. In fact, she said it to both Ariel and I, someday you guys will find nice men who will take care of you. And that's kind of disheartening when you're with the person that you love and they do take care of you. And we don't need anybody else, we've got each other. My grandmother is like 4'10". She always has her hair permed, and she will often go to sleep with rollers. Very, very stereotypical. She wears like little round wire glasses. She speaks with a heavy Calabrese accent. She's always just running around, cooking or doing something. I'm constantly afraid that she's going to like destroy or hurt herself, just by nature of running around the house all the time. And like, my parents actually live right across the street from my grandparents in a very everybody loves Raymond setup. And when I was a kid, I have these vivid memories of like seeing my grandmother in the summer like bust the screen door open, and there's like smoke, and she's got a pot, and there's just like smoke billowing out of the pot, because she's burned something, because she's forgotten she's been cooking it, and she's cooking something else somewhere else. So she's very kind of like chaotic in her methods, and she's very loud, but she is very adorable, like this small little woman, but very, I don't want to say feisty, because feisty is I feel like it's a bit of a sexist word, but she's like punchy. She's a punchy kind of woman. I know that my grandmother has expectations of who she envisions me being with. We've also had experience where there was a woman family friend who came out to her mother, and her mother disowned her because she didn't agree with it. And in conversations with my own mother, my grandmother sort of agreed with the idea of disowning someone who is queer. I think it's just so far out of her realm of understanding. And so in hearing her say, yeah, I kind of agree with what the family friend had done to her daughter, I think it sort of cemented my decision not to tell her, because I didn't want to lose that relationship with her, and I didn't want to fracture my family. I didn't want them to feel like they had to choose between us. And so I think it's been the easiest course of action to just stay quiet on this one. Having gone to a Catholic high school, and I was out there, that was, super difficult, as you might imagine. And so then I got to university, and I was studying journalism, and I was like, this is going to be a really open-minded group of people, and they're going to be lovely, and I can be open about myself, and I don't have to be scared anymore. And I think I was a little naive, and I'd come out, and someone just completely, was like, oh, you're that dyke. And I was like really taken aback. And I think I started to realize that I needed to be more careful. I can't just make assumptions that if you are a person in a specific place or in a specific institution that you are going to be, an ally, for instance. So that I think I've become better at it. But I think there are always people who will throw you off. And that's just one of the realities of being an openly queer person today. I think if my grandmother does find out, my biggest fear is just a negative reaction that will splinter the relationship that we have. I love my grandmother very much. It would break my heart to not have a relationship with her, and her, she's 80. The last years of her life, I would not want to lose a relationship with her. And I think I also fear that my family will feel as though they have to take a side if she decides that our relationship is over, that she will force my parents and my aunt and my cousins to, pick who they want to associate with, or that when it comes to like those Christmas dinners, that my parents and family will have to come to a separate dinner for me and Ariel, and then go back to my grandmother's place for another dinner. And the idea of like disassembling that unity that we have is like really awful to me, and I want to maintain it so much that I think I've kept this to myself with regards to my grandmother, and I think that's like the worst thing that could happen.
Is there any sense that you might be underestimating her ability to be compassionate here?
I've had a lot of people ask that, and I don't think so. I think she's a very, she has a very good sense of her values and beliefs, and I think she's 80 and she's not going to change what she thinks, even if her only granddaughter is different and this is her life and how she's leading it. I want to see a scenario in which she is okay with it, but I can't. And I've had this conversation so many times with my mom and my dad and Ariel and my brother, and we try to rationalize ways in which it will be okay, but none of them are really rooted in reality. You know, they'll say, well, even though she's, 80 and elderly and from a different generation, she could surprise you. She could suddenly be really progressive and just want you to be happy. And I think always back to that, scenario with the family friend. I don't know how that would differentiate from who I am. They'll say, your grandmother will of course attend your wedding. Like, she's your grandmother and you're her only granddaughter and she wants you to be happy. But I've also had people closer to my grandmother, like my mom and my dad, who are like, yeah, you might be right. Like, she's probably not going to take it well. And that doesn't always instill much confidence in me, but I think it is important for us to have a realistic view of what to expect. I think that it's really difficult for Ariel, with my grandmother not knowing about us and about our relationship. She kind of has to be someone she's not around her, and she can't be physical. She can't show any affection to me. She can't call me any like pet names, because that will my grandmother be like, why are you calling her babe? That's weird. So I think it's difficult for Ariel, and she doesn't always love talking about it because it definitely makes her feel pretty crummy. I think she has been an amazing partner in supporting me on the decision, and she has always been willing to do whatever it takes to help maintain those relationships that she knows are important to me. So she's been amazing. So one of my friends who I spoke to for the piece mentioned that she's not out to any of her family either, and she identifies as queer. And for her, she wouldn't consider herself as in the closet, and she's got a ton of friends who are Middle Eastern and from Asia, and so they're not out, but they don't consider themselves closeted. In fact, they would feel it's a little insulting to say that they're not out fully, and that's, I think, because they've just redefined the closet for themselves. They've decided that for their safety and for them to live their lives, that they keep this part of their identity hidden. And I think that's like a really interesting perspective. Instead of letting the closet limit us, perhaps we put limitations on what we believe the closet is. I've taken some solace in knowing that there are other people like that, and that there's another way to see it from a different perspective.
You mentioned your great-grandparents lived very long lives.
Mm-hmm.
How long do you think you'll have to keep this up?
I mean, both my great-grandparents lived into their 90s, so we've got another decade. I mean, that's something that makes me a little bit nervous, because I do think, in the next decade I would love to get married, and that's where this scenario sort of gets a little bit tricky, right? How do you get married without telling your grandmother that you're getting married? Will I be forced at some point to just come clean with it? And I really have trouble imagining what that will look like, just because this has become a really comfortable situation for me. And it's really, like I said, giving me the best of both worlds.
And now, more than a year later, Armand Iqbali catches up with Erica Lenti, and Erica tells us what's changed.
So I guess it's just like off the top, like for people who don't know, what happened this weekend?
We started our Saturday doing what we always do. We went on a nice long walk with our dog Belle. We came back, we had like a small lunch, and Ariel was like, after lunch we'll take a nap and it'll just be like a super chill afternoon. And I was like, that sounds perfect to me. And I got in my sweatpants and we were watching The Sopranos. We were in the middle of an episode and she was like, hey, I just want to show you this thing that I've been doing. And she has this box that we've been collecting little memories of 2020 in. So we've cut out some like newspaper clippings, and we've got some like photos, and there was this little box in there, and she's like, I added this into the box, and I took the box out and opened it, and there was a ring inside. And I immediately just started like bawling my eyes out, and I was like, oh my god, this is happening now. And then she was like, okay, this is great, you need to put some real pants on and go out onto the balcony. So I got changed, and I was like, what the heck is happening? And our families were outside, socially distant, cheering for us, which is so wonderful. And then we were able to go downstairs and just have like a distant champagne toast celebrating us, which was really, really, really nice. And I also, because we had sort of talked about getting engaged this year, I had also bought her a ring already too, which is like the most lesbian thing ever, I think. And so it was just like a really lovely moment at the end of a year that has been so long and exhausting. So yeah, I'm engaged, which is really, really exciting and so surreal to say.